Good evening, everyone. It's really wonderful to have you here tonight, and it's nice to look out across the audience and see people who have been to other installments of the USM Forum on American Democracy. So thank you so much for your commitment to this conversation and to supporting our community, particularly our students tonight. Over the course of this series, we've come together as a community to engage in thoughtful, sometimes challenging, and always important conversations about pluralism and how it informs civic life and our democracy. In our first event, we had Eboo Patel of Interfaith America discuss the history of pluralism and how it has been understood over time. In our second forum, we heard from Raj Vinikota of the Institute for Citizens and Scholars about how we live and enact the principles of pluralism in civic life. And in our third forum, we heard from our own faculty representing different disciplines about how pluralism informs their work and their teaching. Each gathering has reminded us that democracy is not something we inherit fully formed. It is something we must continually nurture, question, and strengthen together. You can find recordings of these events on the USM Forum website if you weren't able to join us. Tonight, we turn our attention to our future and how we move forward. Throughout the year, a group of dedicated students, our forum scholars, and I get emotional when I talk about them, I'm sorry. I'm just so proud of them, and they give me such hope. They joined me in reading, discussions, and in written reflections. The final forum is theirs. They planned it, and each student has a role. They decided to focus on 3 essential commitments associated with pluralism that were introduced by Raj Vinikota. Humanizing one another by sharing our stories and seeing each other as a whole person, finding common ground where it exists and using it as a foundation for collaboration, and educating ourselves and others for civic engagement and civil discourse as learned and practiced skills. These are not easy tasks, but they are necessary ones, and they are work that universities like ours are uniquely positioned and deeply obligated to advance. The format for this evening is as follows. In a moment, I will welcome graduate student Ashley Gonzalez to the podium to offer a few words of introduction, and then we will have a moderated discussion with our students, followed by a period of questions and answers with the audience. We will conclude the evening by presenting our scholars with certificates to honor and recognize the work they did this year. I also want to extend our sincere gratitude to the Pond Family Foundation and to Nancy Pond in particular, who's here with us tonight, for her generous support of this series. Her commitment has made these conversations possible and has helped to create space for meaningful dialogue across differences. So thank you again for being here, for engaging with one another, and for contributing to the ongoing work of strengthening our democracy. I promise you will leave filled with hope. So without further ado, I'll invite Ashley to the stage. She's a graduate student in the Muskie School and one of our students in the Masters in Public Policy and Management program. It's your turn, Ashley. Thank you.
When one side only of a story is heard and often repeated, the human mind becomes impressed with it insensibly. The first United States president, George Washington, wrote that in a letter to Edmund Pennington in 1795. That was 231 years ago. And tonight, I thank you for being here on an evening in the middle of the week. Thank you for caring about our nation, for wanting the best for the United States of America. When we only hear one perspective, one point of view, one version of a story, primary effect bias and first impression bias happens, which is the tendency for our brains to rely on the first information heard to make judgments. Confirmation bias happens when we selectively seek or interpret new information and favor the initial pieces of information we receive. Here I am, tapping into the neurology and cognitive psychology lessons I learned during my college years as I was earning my Bachelor of Science degree. See, this is why faculty always advises us to learn for life, not just for a quiz or an exam. A consequence of only hearing one side of a story is that what we initially hear is impressed on our minds, ways of thinking, and actions. It makes us less willing and less empathetic towards listening to others' ways of thinking. It creates a scenario of us versus them, which only broadens societal division. That is why it is important to withhold judgment and assumptions, to gather more facts, and seek to challenge initial stories heard. That way, we can strengthen our intellectual autonomy, avoid limiting ourselves to thinking in one way, give our brain the power and the chance to analyze facts and an array of opinions, and then generate our own conclusions based on our core beliefs and values. In addition to developing critical thinking in the process of pluralism, we can practice active listening without interruptions when others are speaking and responding with sincere and effective dialogue to ensure that others feel heard, valued, and understood. Creating a sense of belonging, given every current event happening in this moment, and fostering a compassionate, respectful, and inclusive environment can start right here and right now in our local community. In the letter that I read initially, not only was the first president of the United States concerned and hoping for pluralism, but he was also interested in finding a way for Native Americans and white Americans to coexist and get along. Getting along is easier said than done. But America, the land that created the notion of the American dream, the beacon of freedom for the world, the land of opportunities, the homeland that put the first human on the moon, invented the internet and the telephone, can also aspire to achieve pluralism. The creators of our Constitution are the pillars of our democracy. They laid the foundation for our nation and taught us leadership and that getting along often requires compromise, constructive debate, mutual respect, and thoughtful dialogue. With the E Pluribus Unum national motto of the United States, together we can form a more perfect union. Thank you, University of Southern Maine President Jacqueline Edmondson, for inviting multiple perspectives on civic topics. Andrew Pollum is the Vice President of Student Affairs at the University of Southern Maine. With more than 2 decades of experience across a wide range of student affair functions, including housing, community standards, Title IX, crisis management, leadership development, and even serving as an adjunct faculty member for the Student Affairs and Higher Education graduate program at Indiana State University. His professional career spans institutions in New England, but most prevalently across the Midwest where his career began. Andrew earned his doctorate in higher education and organizational change from Benedictine University. I invite you all to give a big round of applause to welcome the voices of the future leaders of America who will be introduced by Vice President of Student Affairs, Andrew Pollum.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I am so happy and honored to be here tonight to moderate this discussion and to have been asked by our students to do so. So let's meet our panelists. The first student I want to introduce to you tonight is Justin Gibbons, an economics major, Spanish and honors double minor from Bridgeton, Maine. Mia Noon, political science major, women and gender studies and social justice minors from Sanford, Maine. Gino Cavula, political science and philosophy double major, linguistics and honors double minor from Yarmouth, Maine. Chris Mahays, mechanical engineering major from Yarmouth, Maine. And you've met Ashley Gonzalez, who's Master of Policy Planning and Management student from Saco, Maine. Also helping us in the audience tonight, some additional students that will be assisting us with the Q&A portion of the evening. Haley Greco, communications major from Philadelphia, PA. And Kaylee Hersom, media studies major from Troutman, North Carolina. Okay, panelists, let me begin tonight by asking each of you to briefly share what brought you to tonight's event. And we'll start with you, Justin.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for being here tonight. It's great to see such incredible outreach and inclusion in our community, to have this many people here, so thank you all very much for that. I'm at this event today because I'm gravely concerned by the state of affairs in our country today. As someone who works for U.S. Senator Susan Collins, I'm thankful to have a seat at the table, but I also know that it is becoming increasingly clear that Republicans, Democrats, and everyone in between can no longer work together. Regardless of where one lies on the political spectrum, this is unacceptable. We as a society need to restore bipartisan unity in our great country, and I see it as something that will enable America to thrive. It might take a village, but I know that we are all capable of it. As a future public servant, this event will serve as a catalyst for me to lead our nation with the right attitude, and one that will allow me to work across differences with others for the betterment of the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Mia.
Thank you, Andrew. I am here today because in my experience in student government, I've been serving as our undergraduate student senate chair for the past 2 years. We have an urgent issue in higher education in its entirety where students are often disconnected and non-confrontational, and we aren't learning the skills on how to have meaningful conversations with one another. We aren't learning how to be comfortable with disagreement. And that sense of building compassion and respect within dialogue and conversation is so incredibly important in order to thrive as a society in its entirety. And I feel an inclination that we need to empower students to develop those skills, to have an interest in pursuing those skills, and empower them to be the change that they want to see within higher education.
Gino, what brought you here tonight?
In my home country, civic dialogue is limited because people's voices lack power. But when I moved to the US a couple of years ago, I had my first experience with real civic dialogue. People felt empowered enough to talk about their beliefs, and those ideas and opinions and beliefs that they had could actually gain tangible form. I was captivated by this experience, and I want to protect it because it forms the foundation of a functional democracy and society. By participating in this event and speaking to such a diverse group of people, I believe I'm contributing to the effort to safeguard democracy.
Chris?
Hello there. I'd like to take just a little brief time just to say hi to everyone. I would not have seen most of you probably, or I might not see most of you for the rest of my life. But for this moment, I get to see you guys, and I want you all to know that I care about you, and that by far that is the biggest reason of why I'm here. Because by all accounts, I really shouldn't be here. I am an engineer. I should be focusing on building a bridge, or welding, or something sciencey, something mathy. Engineering doesn't mix with politics usually, unless you're building a bridge like they are. Yeah. But when you are an engineer, you learn to see everything, because every detail matters. And when you apply that to a political sense, you realize that every person matters. And that's why I'm here. I see much more than just a political spectrum or countries fighting each other. I see people. And what I see in people is a sense of brokenness. This sort of like a disease that we all have where we feel the pressure to hate one another or to get angry and just stop caring, like such an apathetic sense of view. And that's sad. And as an engineer, I know that some problems don't have, well, actually most problems I'd say, don't have an immediate quick fix. That's for the business school. I am more than an engineer, and I am more than just an American. I am human. And I think above all, most importantly, is I'm a Christian. And I'm called to see everyone, really see them, struggling like I'm always struggling, and to just let you know that I hear you. The pain is real, but I'm here to love you as I'm called to, and I'm here to fulfill that call.
Thank you, Chris. Ashley.
Like many of you, I care about this beautiful nation. I believe in American exceptionalism and that democracy is important for stability, prosperity, and the protection of our rights and freedoms of the United States. This year, we will be celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States. Let's ask ourselves, what can we do for our country? Amidst economic, social, environmental, and political challenges, America needs us all right now, in this moment, to develop and practice good communication and respect for one another, to ensure that the health of our democracy is protected and handed into the future generations of our country.
So as Dr. Edmondson introduced at the beginning, you all chose 3 themes that came from previous forums that you wanted to really explore a little bit tonight with the dialogue. So I want to start with the first one about humanizing each other through story. And I'm going to start with you with this question. How can storytelling be used not just to express identity, but to build connection across real difference?
Thank you, Andrew. Storytelling is a critical tool in any form of dialogue, political or not, because it often, or at least it very much should center the lived experiences of other people. A given political or sociocultural issue often isn't black and white, contrary to popular belief, but lived experience through storytelling provides the strongest form of testimony on any given issue. We should listen to people with direct experience or impact, and we should listen to them with immense respect and compassion and seriously reflect on what they have to share. The major way that we are able to do so is through representation, whether that's in media or in politics. Having someone at the table that has experienced the things that you are talking about, they are able to tell you how something impacts them. And as their testimony is the strongest, they are the most capable of maybe not completely changing someone's mind, because let's be real, people are stubborn and people tend to be very firm in their beliefs, and that's okay. But they can hear someone that has experienced something and they can understand and hopefully empathize with them. And storytelling can change their foundational understanding of a given issue or disagreement, and it may not completely change their stance on the issue or thing, but if they listen with respect and compassion, they are able to keep that in mind and respect those people and be able to change their understanding and how they proceed.
Excellent. Thank you. Gino.
Humans tend to connect through shared experiences and storytelling. Storytelling is a powerful tool for learning about others and fostering connections by identifying commonalities. By listening to each other's lived experiences, we gain insight to their beliefs and behaviors. People's personalities and beliefs don't just emerge spontaneously. Understanding them requires delving into the trajectories that shaped their thoughts and convictions. And the best way to do that is by listening to someone's story or telling them your own.
Chris, same question to you. How can storytelling be used not just to express identity, but to build connection across real difference?
I find it interesting that since the start of everything, or look at all of our earliest civilizations, the main three that we're all told to learn about when we're in 6th grade, we're always so obsessed with stories. And I think it's because of just the power that they have. We can share all of our ideas, all of our feelings, all of our ideals with practically anyone and everyone. And I think for some people who don't have that voice, that a story is what they need the most. And with that story, it's really easy to get trapped in the us versus them mentality. But taking the time to hear those stories and also engage with other people's stories, the other side, I think it's a great way to sort of break through that. I know I mentioned earlier that I'm a Christian, and I know that for a lot of people that sends red flags or sirens. And while unfortunate, I get it. I get that. Growing up, I grew up in a Baptist church in Connecticut, which, first of all, don't go to Connecticut. But it was really easy to get lost in that us versus them mentality. I remember growing up, I was told to stay away from the non-Christians because, them and their rock music, their Harry Potters, they're bad. And it was just very unfortunate to be there. And, well, I believe that God has a way of breaking those walls. And some life stuff happened, as life generally does. And the very family, or the church that was supposed to be there for me, ignored me. And it sort of broke that story that I held on to, that one-sided thing. And what came after was spectacular. I experienced the kindness from the groups that I was told to stay away from. And for someone stuck on one side for so long, it's kind of earth-shattering when the people that you're told, like, oh, they'll be mean to you or they'll do this or that, they're just people too. It's very easy to get stuck into us versus them. And I've made my peace now with seeing both sides and understanding that the real message is a message of love for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Justin.
Thank you, Andrew. Storytelling in its most basic sense allows one to reflect on who they are and what inspired their qualities. It also allows one to build connections across real differences. While storytelling may never sow the seeds of division, it can redirect conflict energy by humanizing others and helping us as a society get away from labels. Examining some famous examples of the American dream allows us to do this. Sonia Sotomayor grew up in low-income housing projects in the Bronx, only to get educated and become a Supreme Court justice. Clarence Thomas, born in Pinpoint, Georgia, grew up in the poor, segregated South without a father, but through hard work and dedication became the second African American to be appointed to the Supreme Court. Marco Rubio, raised by Cuban immigrants with service jobs, worked tirelessly to get a law degree and become a U.S. Senator, and now serves as the U.S. Secretary of State. Barack Obama grew up in the house of a single mother, powering through adversity to become a U.S. Senator from Illinois and later the 44th President of the United States. While many of these individuals are on opposite sides of the political spectrum, and I disagree with some of them vehemently, they've all experienced something similar and deserving of recognition, notably needing to fight harder than the person sitting next to them at work or in the classroom in order to get past challenges. Shared experiences build connection, respect, and rapport, which helps ease tension. As we will explore later, differences of opinion are less important than how they are litigated. If we can keep this in mind, our country can change a lot and for the better. Thank you.
Ashley.
Justin, it is great how you provided leadership examples such as the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who overcame adversity, and the Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, making history as a Hispanic American. Immigration has been a hot topic in politics and current events. I think that is something we can all agree on. I have been an interpreter of the French language. Currently, I'm a Spanish translator and interpreter for immigration cases. Gino, I want to thank you for briefly sharing your story earlier while you were giving your introduction and expressing how when voices are heard in America, it is powerful and can be impactful for policies that we want to see. Listening to stories in difficult situations has given me an understanding on the reasons why people migrate and look up to the United States. Whether you're on the side that is concerned about cultural assimilation and in favor of the rule of law, or on the side that believes in the economic and cultural richness that immigrants and their children contribute to the United States, along with being compassionate to those who seek asylum, or if you're somewhere in between in the spectrum, or maybe you don't have an opinion on it, that is what you believe in. Pluralism makes room to have a debate on those opinions and positions. And it might make you upset, it might make you feel uncomfortable, and it might make you ask yourself, what did the other side say now? But this is how our country of more than 342 million people moves forward. When we are passionate about something, when our voices are heard in civil discourse, we are putting into practice a healthy democracy that is committed to pluralism. And maybe that will inspire new policies, or maybe it won't. But we need that social cohesion for stability and peace.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going to move on to the next question. The second theme that you all chose was the theme finding common ground. And one of the things that you all have talked about is sometimes the challenges that arise in that exercise. And so I want to ask you, and we'll start with you, Gino, how can we engage disagreement in ways that might strengthen dialogue? And how can finding common ground and civil discourse factor into this?
Engaging in disagreement well starts by treating it as data rather than a threat. When someone disagrees, we can slow down and ask clarifying questions like, what experience is behind your view, or what are you most worried about? So we uncover the values, fears, and hopes underneath their position, not just the surface take. Naming shared values, naming shared values like safety, fairness, belonging, and human dignity creates a thin layer of common ground that can hold the conversation, even when concrete proposals still clash. Civil discourse then becomes the set of habits that makes this possible. Separating people from ideas, restating the person's view in good faith before responding, and being willing to revise or refine our own stance. Those are the things that make a disagreement well. I've experienced that at firsthand here at USM. I have a friend, and we are in very different sides or in complete opposite sides of what we call the political spectrum. But whenever we have a conversation, we try to go first to the things that we agree on, and those things are usually human dignity, safety, fairness, the right for the basic needs. And when we start our conversations like that, we've realized that they tend to go better. And at the end of the conversation, we may disagree, but those disagreements are for small stuff, but not the big and important stuff.
Thank you so much. Chris?
I think the cool thing about disagreement, if there really is a cool thing about disagreeing with someone, is that it's when you pull back all the layers. No, I will not talk about Shrek, but if you like an onion, you pull back all the layers of disagreement, you'll always go back to the fact that we're all human. And whoever you're disagreeing with, whatever you're fighting about, whatever you're fighting for, you're not fighting a thing or a place or an object. You're really fighting against a fellow human who is just as lovable and important as you are. Although you might not have that same opinion, it's an objective truth. Everyone has someone that is important to them. And we have to honor that whenever we do reach those disagreements. Now, some disagreements are really easy. Some people like coffee, others don't. And it comes to be really challenging when you have the harder disagreements. And I think for that, you have to absolutely take a second, drink some water, hydrate, and just remember that the goal is to still love that person, even if you don't come up with a solution. Engineers, though, you do want to have a solution, because, yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Mia, how about you? How can we engage disagreement in ways that might strengthen dialogue? And what role does finding common ground in civil discourse factor into that?
Thank you, Andrew. I think that disagreement can exist front and center continuously. I think that disagreement is something that's ultimately unavoidable in a lot of different contexts. And common ground and civil discourse are what provides the skills to do so with respect and compassion, as I mentioned earlier. Excess care to common ground can, in larger contexts, create a non-confrontational landscape. It really is a science to truly balance disagreement and common ground, because you need to be able to validate the fact that you disagree, but you also need to keep respecting one another, agree to disagree, or find things to agree on. And in my experience in student government, what I've found is sometimes, and very, very often, as I'm sure many of you are aware with politics in particular, people are not willing to hear what you have to say, or they think that what you have to say is a direct attack on what they are saying. And so something that I often feel is the most important and best thing you can do in that situation is meet them where they're at. Thank you for sharing. I understand where you're coming from, and this is why I think this way. Validating their standpoint and sharing your own standpoint, and like affirming that this is not a direct attack on you or your beliefs. I understand where you're coming from and how you have this position. This is simply my position, is the best thing that you can do when intentional dialogue and listening isn't entirely possible. Disagreement can exist and be there, but knowing how to find common ground and having civil discourse skills is what keeps it calm.
It also helps with student government when you're the one holding the gavel and you can, yeah. Justin, how about you? How can we engage disagreement in a way that might strengthen dialogue?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Before I get into my response to that, I'd just like to say to Mia, I think that she really kind of hit the nail on the head with regard to kind of affirming everyone's position while still allowing that constructive dialogue to occur. As I see it, disagreement is not the issue that we have in society. Having different points of view is healthy and something that we should treasure in our great land. That is, after all, the essence of civil discourse. The issue is that we don't know how to deal with disagreement anymore. People have become prone to reducing their feelings about others with different political beliefs to stereotypes, insults, or worse. There are countless examples of this, but the point is clear. This type of inflammatory rhetoric needs to stop, and it's going to take all of us to do that. We need to reorient ourselves in a few different ways in order to accomplish this mission. First, we need to be intellectually vulnerable. We can't act like we know everything. Otherwise, we will be susceptible to the Dunning-Kruger effect, whereby we are so confident about something despite not having a corresponding level of confidence to match that. This naturally creates a sense of arrogance and stubbornness in places of disagreement, making civil discourse and finding common ground a very insurmountable task. Second, we have to actually want change and think about our nation in the bigger picture. We have to want to sit down and have conversations with those who look at the world differently. The issue is that oftentimes our allegiances are to our political parties, which have forced us each into echo chambers where civil conversations are penalized and made to be seemingly bad. Overturning all of this requires a change of the mindset and a willingness to listen. Once we do this, we can start working together, and we will find that we have a lot more in common than meets the eye. This recognition will break partisan impasses, foster trust, and lead to meaningful legislation that benefits all. After all, what the American people want most is a shift from performative politics to policy debates that produce actual meaningful dialogue. Olympia Snowe, former U.S. Senator of Maine, once shared her thought process on working in the legislature, and it's something that I hope all of you will take away with you tonight. It doesn't matter whether it's a conservative, liberal, moderate idea. Is it a good idea? Does it work? That's the point here, and I hope that all of you take that with you as you walk out the doors tonight. Thank you.
Ashley.
I'll start off by saying, Justin, I like how you brought up the quote stated by former United States Senator of Maine, Olympia Snowe, as we think about what is on the mind of the American people during kitchen table talk, which is medical bills, their children's education, food affordability, just to name a few. When our perspectives get challenged, it stimulates intellectual growth. Having a difference of opinions not only reveals new sides of yourself, but new ways of thinking that you would not have thought of before hearing new ideas. We have limits in wisdom, and that is part of getting to know ourselves. We have limits in understanding, and we are not proficient in everything, which should lead to creating more tolerance for active listening, taking the time for opinions to be absorbed, and to have a broader understanding of issues. The way we think and feel is not the same, but what must be shared is respect and empathy. We are constructing our own journey. We are the authors of our own story that is uniquely ours to write, and we should be able to embrace our unique perspectives and share them with others around us.
Okay, panelists, the third theme that you chose was civic and relational skills as practice. And I'm going to steal a phrase that Mia shared about how it's really is an art in how you work in helping find common ground. And so I'm going to start with you, Chris, and ask the question, what specific skills do you feel are most important for productive dialogue today? And if you were able to design an experience or a course at USM that would help instill those skills in your peers, your engineering classmates, what would that potentially look like?
All 3 calculus classes. No, on a more serious note, maybe a bit of an apology to you all, but my responses aren't fully scripted. It's more so of I think of this as just a conversation with everyone, especially since I know I won't be able to have a one-on-one with everyone. I must apologize. I do have classes tomorrow morning. But when I was thinking about this question, I kept hitting a sort of wall where listening is important, but why should we listen? Why do we listen? Why do we hear each other out? Why would we care about someone? Why should we? And I'm sure, of course, everyone is thinking, well, yeah, you don't want to be a bad person. But if you really think about that, I keep hitting this answer of love. And I'm not really sure you could teach love to someone. It's definitely not a course. Love is, I'd say, intangible. We're all lucky that it doesn't follow the laws of thermodynamics. Love is endless. And I think that all we can really do is just show people love in the best way that we can. I think experience here would be the best teacher. But then again, I am just one man, and I know that my fellow peers have a bunch of wonderful ideas. So.
Thank you, Chris. Ashley.
If I could design a class at the University of Southern Maine to strengthen civic dialogue, it would be about the Noscite Ipsum, meaning get to know yourself quest, which will allow us to distinguish between emotions and rational thoughts as a step towards practicing good communication. While we do not really know whether the phrase originated when it was inscribed in the archaeological sites of central Greece during the 6th or 7th century before Christ, or if it was earlier around the time of the 7 sages of Greece, it was something later discussed by Plato and Socrates, and today it is relevant as we speak about how to get along well with others. We must ask ourselves, how do we avoid being strangers to oneself? And how often does that happen? We need to be constantly checking ourselves, our principles, beliefs, habits, reactions, and emotions with honesty and openly. We have to see where we have flaws in our views, as it can be a tool for improvement when we are having disagreements or when we are having dialogue with others. Does the current version of myself, which includes my actions, my essence, my way of being, my perceptions of myself, differ from how I viewed myself in the past, match how I am presenting myself to others now, and match the vision that I have for my ideal self in the future? Plato thought of recognizing the mind and soul in order to be able to comprehend concepts such as justice, love, and goodness. Plato thought of being self-reflective enough to recognize ignorance as chains that need to be broken, and said to free oneself from a cave and to crawl into the light of genuine knowledge. America today, and the democracy in America, needs informed citizens who are self-aware of their morals and values.
Justin, how about you?
Yes. Thank you, Andrew. Productive dialogue requires a few key things in society today: active listening, seeking out common interests and agreements, and not making assumptions about others are a few that come to mind immediately. If I could design one experience or course at USM to strengthen students' civic dialogue skills, it would start with fostering knowledge about key issues in society. All too often, dialogue is built on poor, unobjective information. We all start attacking each other because we are litigating the facts as opposed to the policy in question. This inspires a fight or flight reaction and makes individuals even more dissatisfied with the political process, forcing everyone into their corners and making the attempt at civil discourse much more difficult. I'm a big fan of Stanford University's deliberative polling program because it allows students to talk about issues after being given balanced information in a concentrated space. This experiment has been applied to some of these controversial discussions in the past and led to a more informed and educated populace that is better able to tackle matters of policy and actually have conversations about them. The best part about the program is that it forces conversations to happen across different perspectives and people's backgrounds. In our own university community, I envision a similar program being implemented into a first-year course, something entitled Difficult Dialogues, which we already have a program entitled of. But I'm really envisioning a first-year experience that would tackle some of these key issues that face society today. To the students in the audience today who will be at USM longer than me, I want to say this. Be the change that you want to see at the university. Foster conversations and make a difference. And above all else, have these conversations with your peers and the administration. It is never too soon as the next generation of leaders to start advocating for yourself. And I hope that you do just that as you walk out the doors. Thank you.
Mia, what specific skills are most important for productive dialogue today, and what experience or class would you design to help teach that to your peers?
Well, I would say, first of all, we are in a particularly urgent moment in the academic and even social realm where we have, all due respect, lost the plot. My generation, as well as the generation of my 8-year-old sister, my 3-year-old sister, and 1-year-old brother to be determined, I'll let you know in like a decade. We were socially isolated due to COVID, and our generations are extensively focused on social media. Even worse, with things like generative AI, we are making shortcuts instead of having meaningful growth as scholars or even as people. A lot of my little cousins are preteens, and I've heard stories about like ages 12 to 14 asking ChatGPT how to handle specific social situations, and that is horrifying to me. In higher education and even secondary education, we desperately need a course, experience, something that just goes back to basics, to be completely honest. The basic means of critical thinking, research, and intentional dialogue, civic or otherwise. Scholars should know how to care and they should want to care and faithfully build upon those areas, but that is a science that is rapidly fading. Our want to improve is lacking, and there's substantial gaps in skill and care. You see, at USM specifically, a lot of us that are interested in student leadership, we show up, it's a singular group of people that show up in multiple different contexts. Like student senate alone, student senate, student senate, student senate, just as an example. But these things can be done through discussing like a course that goes into those back to basic things and going through current events and holding discussions that don't just address your opinion, but allow the space to express your emotions and reflect and apply those absolutely critical skills. We just gotta go back to basics.
Thank you, Mia. Nino.
When I was in high school, I had the privilege of participating in a project called the Can We Project. And in that project, students would have to do research about certain topics like gun control, abortion, and many more. And for that, we would have a couple of weeks, I think a month. And then once a month, we would have a practice session. And then after a couple of months, us, Yarmouth High School, and many other students from other schools would get together in Augusta and have discussions about those topics, and we had moderators. And yeah, that was actually my first experience with civic dialogue. And through that, I've learned a very important skill, which was asking questions. In this generation, in my generation, I feel like we don't ask enough questions. We are so used to getting answers without asking questions, and for that, I blame AI, because when we ask questions to ChatGPT, the questions tend to be so shallow, because we know that ChatGPT is going to figure out. And with that, we have lost the ability or the skill to ask questions. So if I could bring a type of class that would force a skill, would be something like the Kami project. And I would like to give a shout out to one of my professors or teachers for that project who is here, Ms. Enriquez.
Okay, we're going to pause the questions that I have for a moment and open it up to the audience for any questions that you might have for the panel or for specific panelists. We do have our two students, Kaylee and Haley, who will be helping with microphones. So if you have a question, raise your hand, they'll come to you, and then you'll have a chance to ask the question of the panelists. One up front here. Couple.
I'm John Lesko, and I'm a retired professor and cross-discipline all the social sciences. What I noticed throughout this series was a very much focus on the agent rather than the structure. In social science, there is this thing called the agent-structure debate. Well, in retirement, what I focused on is what Harvard University has done, and that is bring the best minds on the conservative side and the best minds on the liberal side together to figure out what needs to be done structurally, because it's the structure of a broken democracy that causes the behaviors that we so dislike. And since 2020, when they wrote that, and I wrote a review of it, a little group of us out in the western part of this county, in Oxford County, have been doing workshops to help people talk through the free 71-page booklet that the Harvard American Academy of Arts and Sciences published. We've given away well over 100 of those booklets. Thank you.
Thank you. There's some questions over here.
Hi, this is working. Yeah. This is really incredible. I'd love to see all 5 of you run collectively for governor. Or seriously advise the new governor, whoever that might be. So my name is Jeff Edelstein. I'm actually a longtime public policy mediator and have worked in the field of dialogue and what you're talking about for many years, long before any of you were born. So I'm going to throw kind of a hardball at you. How can you see addressing these issues? I love what you're saying, asking questions. But how do we address these issues in a time, particularly for younger people, of AI, social media, and a pretty severe mental health crisis in this country, and particularly challenging young people? And they have any bandwidth or interest at hardball in talking across divides when life is so uncertain and the future is so uncertain, and so many young people are really just trying to stay alive. Thank you for, I'm trusting you with your heart and your wisdom to be able to ask you what feels like kind of a tough and not a very hopeful question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I just want to actually go back to the point that you were bringing up about how it's a top-down approach. We need to think about kind of bridging gaps, bridging divides across younger people by looking at what the actual structure is. Going back to what Mia said, it's all about going back to the basics and finding ways to reform education to actually implement some of those critical thinking skills, actually force dialogue that is bringing together people from the left side of the aisle and the right side of the aisle and everything in between. So it's really a matter of structure, in my opinion. And also, as many of us brought up in this talk, it goes back to a willingness to do so. We can create all of the structures in the world, we can create all of the parameters that we'd like and hope that it goes well in an idealistic world, but ultimately we are all free agents. And it takes all of us together in a collective way to say, hey, we're actually going to change. We actually want to have that meaningful conversation across the political spectrum. So it really goes back to finding it in your heart, but also using some of these vehicles like education to do so. Thank you for that question again.
Go ahead, Chris.
If I may. Oops, sorry, Ashley.
Go ahead.
It's interesting to think about how most of the time we're so preoccupied by two sides. You're either this or that. And that's great for a science like in engineering, because it's true. It's either this is a work term, this is an energy term, like that's pretty concrete. It's not going to change, it's not going to shift. But for systems involving humans, we're all very complicated. Not one of us really fits in a perfect mold, like you are this or you are that. You're a mix of both. And I think reframing left, right, it's ignoring all the people in the middle. Because I feel like most of the time, people aren't in the middle. They might get pushed around to choose a side, but they exist in the middle, and that's a good place to be. Because when you're in the middle, you have an equal opportunity of being at both sides. And so I think for fixing a structure, I think it's also important to know that we as humans are broken, and a broken thing can't produce a perfect thing. It's just not possible. And that might sound pessimistic or doom and gloom, but it's nice to know that we can still build new things. We're always constantly building new things. And we're here before for a long time. I think it's very hopeful to know that we will be here for a very long time. Every time something happens, yeah, it sucks, but we find a way through it. And I think we're just not used to that fact because this is our first time going through this. No, this exact scenario, everything that is happening right now is unique. And that's just our challenge. All we can do is do our best, love each other, and try to make it better for the next people.
Thank you for your question. I am glad that you asked about this and I'm also glad that we're having these conversations at the university level, because this is our educational journey. And this is the place where we're sharing different ideas, different perspectives. We're learning about diverse themes and topics, and that is stimulating the quest for spiritual, social, and intellectual development and growth. We are preparing ourselves to, once we graduate, to go and join the workforce and be important members, although we're already important members of our society, but now with knowledge, and bring that knowledge from the university level so that we are able to work on those society challenges that we see on a global scale. And I think you brought up a very important point, and it was about the example that we're setting up for the youth and children. It is important for us as adults to be having, and I think, Mia, you brought up a good point about this. When we're having a dialogue and there is discourse and there is a lack of agreement, we need to be speaking in a way where we're saying, I hear you, I see what you're saying, I kind of understand what you're saying, but I'm going to try and see what the logic behind your explanation is. So we have to have those conversations so that children and the youth around us hear us, and we're setting up a good example for them. Additionally, I think that our civic duty is also to participate in town hall meetings. If politicians are having meetings, we should be able to attend them, and we should ask them that we want to see dialogue. We want to see them debate on the kitchen table talk issues that are impacting the American people. We want to see solutions.
Other questions from the audience?
Good evening. My name is Barbara Sullivan. I'm an educator. I don't know if I came here tonight and in general these past few months with a lot of hope. There isn't a lot of hope for many of us out there. David Brooks wrote in The Atlantic last year that our job collectively is to teach and help young people become the best versions of themselves. That's my job for myself, is to become the best version of myself. But I hope to instill that in young people. You've talked about hope, you've talked about respect, you've talked about courtesy to other human beings, you've talked about love, you've talked about following the good example of those leaders who came before us. And I am so proud of you. I don't know you, but I'm very proud of you, and I'm very filled with hope tonight. I really thank you for that gift. I'm extremely grateful that I came tonight. I'm glad I made that decision, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Hi, my question is motivated by the adage, you cannot be what you cannot see. And so I'm curious, who do you consider to be current positive public role models of civil discourse?
That's a great question.
Uh-oh.
Gino, go ahead.
Okay, so the answer for this question, I'm very inspired by Barack Obama, but when I think about like a role model, is someone who's already dead, who is Fyodor Dostoevsky, who's a Russian writer. And I don't think I've read any author that understands the human soul as much as him, and I'm heavily inspired by him. He's not alive anymore because you said current, but when it comes to current people, I would say Barack Obama.
Go ahead, man.
Thank you. Also not alive, but someone that I tend to think about as someone that could truly get along with anyone and everyone would be my grandfather. He served as a state representative until he passed away in 2015. And growing up on a sheep farm in Sanford, and him identifying as a Democrat, we were kind of the black sheep per se, of other farms in Maine. Obviously, like agriculture tends to be a kind of polarizing space, but he was able to find that common ground because, spoiler alert, we need food. Food is important. Access to good food is also important. And I tend to think about him a lot because he was truly someone that was able to get along with any type of person, regardless of how much they disagreed on the bigger other things. But like he always brought things back to agriculture and caring about people and community care. So throughout this forum, I've been thinking about him a lot.
I have two answers here. My first is going to be my boss, Senator Collins. I believe that at this juncture in time, we do not have enough representatives who are willing to cross the aisle and actually solve issues. So I would say Senator Collins first, but I would also say former Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. He has a rule and keeps a boat near Washington, and it is to, whenever he goes on that boat and has conversations, he says, I will bring one Democrat and I will bring one Republican to every single conversation. For every one of those people, there will be another. And I think that if we are looking at civil discourse, if we are looking to bridge gaps, it means bringing both sides of the political spectrum to the party. And more importantly, recognizing that life is not all about politics and actually finding ways to talk to some of these people who are across the other side of the aisle politically, but we can actually have regular conversations about fishing or something much more menial, but something that we can all connect on at a deeper level.
Ashley, please.
A good role model is former Senator John McCain from Arizona. If you all remember a few years ago when there were questions about the birthplace of former President Barack Obama, Senator John McCain stood up and said, "No, ma'am." He acknowledged, along those words that former President Barack Obama was born in the United States and that he was legitimately a citizen of this country. And that literally demonstrated how, even though he was on the other side of the political spectrum, he had the courage to stand up and speak the facts.
Hi, Gino. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so thankful for you all. It's really challenging to put yourself out there as you have this evening, and I am so wowed and amazed by what you're doing. I am a co-advisor for a constructive dialogue group at the high school I work at, and one of the challenges that we have faced is how to diversify participation. Oftentimes, constructive dialogue self-selects for a particular type of student, and as you said, student senate, student senate, student senate kind of thing. So my question for you, because you brought up the impact that storytelling has and how it acts as a cultural reservoir of memory, do you have a story you could share of a time where you kind of brought a person on board who might have been resistant to participating in constructive dialogue and why you think that you were successful in helping them do that?
I have mentioned a friend of mine who I met here at USM, and as I said, we have very different opinions about most stuff. And at the beginning, we clashed a lot, and there were times that we almost fought. And yeah, I feel like that would be very satisfied if I actually fought him, but no. After a couple of hours, after we had those discussions, and we got a little violent, we would, just go separate ways, but the next day, we would have another conversation, and as I said, we would ask very basic stuff like, do you think that people have the right to safety? Do you think that people should do this, should do that? And when it came to the basic stuff, we always agreed on. And sometimes we did not agree about gun control, but we still agreed about stuff like human dignity. And with him, I've learned a lot. I've got mad very often before with him, so many times that I cannot even count. And I have a couple of friends that actually saw me and him having discussions many times. But at the end of the day, we always agree that we are all humans, and whatever hurts me hurts him too. And as long as we realize that, we will always agree on the stuff that really matters.
If I may, it's an interesting piece to hear about the self-selecting. It's, for me, I don't have I guess I'm in the story, but it's not really my story. As I've said before, engineer. We're not talking about bridges or robots or static equilibrium. Yeah, words. But I am here, and the only reason why I am here is I'm not on any student senate meeting or anything, or even quite frankly, I wasn't on any student group at all until about a month ago when I became the treasurer of the engineering student committee. But I care about people, and I wasn't really sure what to do with that. Because as an engineer, you're really only focused on math, science, what are you going to build, projects, all that fun stuff. Not really people, but I care about people. And I have to give credit to my advisor, Dr. Eaton, and President Edmondson. Together, individually, they gave me the confidence, one, to invite me here, and two, to accept me here as well. I was very lost, so to speak, of what to do. An engineer with feelings. What do you do? And that's how I heard about this. And I remember that first event, meeting all the other students, and everyone's political science, or they doing all this amazing stuff, all this social outreach. And they asked me, "What are you doing here? Like, there's no math involved." I'm like, I know. That's why I left the backpack at home. But that was a great experience. And it was nice to get that email to be like, hey, you should join. Like, it's a great way to start bridging the two, because I feel like engineering has been very disconnected from everyone. But we're all here. So we all share this one world. So I think that's what we need to do, start reaching out.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
So I've heard a lot from each of you about kind of a hope. I would say that I get a sense of hopefulness from each of you, and maybe even though you're articulating it very differently, the sense that you have for the moral equality of each people, all people, each person in our country. And I'm wondering if you can, just to kind of build on what one of the other audience members asked, if you could share a story with us about where you yourself experienced this in your pre-college years. So I mostly work with high school students, not exclusively, but I'm really interested in how do people develop that sense for that, for each other, that respect, that care, that love, that everyone matters, regardless of their difference of perspective. Where did you experience that yourselves? You could share that with us so that we can help provide those experiences for future generations.
Yeah, I would say it stemmed right from home for me. I mean, it kind of helped having people engaged in politics and community organizing in my household. But I lived in a household where NPR was playing on the radio literally 24/7. So I heard all sorts of things all the time. And some of it made me fall asleep when I was younger. But, I feel like I really learned just by being around grown-ups. I didn't have like younger siblings in my house or anything like that. So it was just me and adults almost all the time. So I just sat, I listened to what they were watching, what they were doing. I'd be like, let me watch cartoons. They'd be like, no. And I just watched them discuss all these important things. Politics were always at the dinner table, but we were surrounded by people that were so different from us all the time. And I was just taught that was business as usual. So it may not be like a story, but my understanding and my ability to mutually respect anyone and everyone just comes from the people that raised me.
I had the privilege of traveling a lot. It wasn't for the right reasons or what I would call the right reasons, but in my way to the U.S., I was in many countries, and through that, I lived in a bunch of cultures. I've tried a bunch of food, and I've heard a lot of people talking about their own beliefs. And just by listening to people, I could always find some kind of commonality. And it made me realize that we are all humans. And to even solidify that more, when I moved to the US 4 years ago, I was placed in a hotel in Yarmouth. And Yarmouth is not the most diverse place in the world, as I believe we all know. It's not diverse at all. And but I made a lot of friends. And even though we were in very social, economical situations, we got along very well. And I made most of my best friends there. And it's just funny how we are so different, but we get along so well. And yeah, I've learned a lot with them, and I think that's the reason why.
I would second what Mia has said about some of these skills coming out of the household. I think that children are some of the most vulnerable in that sense and can really kind of reinforce beliefs, moral systems, and other types of values. But for individuals who may not be blessed enough to be put in that type of environment, I think that another general rule is to just put yourself in environments where you are being challenged. Don't just fall in line because that's what feels comfortable. Go out, if you lie on the liberal side of the political spectrum, and have dinners with conservative people, or go to town halls of conservative politicians. And it goes the other way around as well. Challenging yourself is ultimately where kind of building some of these connections across political beliefs and systems will enable us to become much more tied together, person to person, as opposed to political belief to political belief, and it will make our country a more perfect union at the end of the day.
I want to give a round of applause to the audience for those questions. That was fantastic. And if you still do have questions, I know that our panelists will be around here at the end of the session and would love a chance to connect with you. But I want to finish up our discussion with a quick question for all of you. What is one thing for each of us that are here today, your peers, each other on the panel, that you would say starting today we could do to strengthen democracy in our daily interactions? Go ahead, Ashley.
Let's be curious, reach out to individuals with different viewpoints, and ask them what their opinions are on those topics, and also express your own perspectives. And we might realize that there is common ground, and or also that we are able to understand the explanations on the other side of why they think the way they do.
Justin?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. So similar to what I had just alluded to in that last question, it's important that we all reach out to people of different political backgrounds as you. Avoid the temptation to defend yourself in the process. And that was something that I didn't allude to prior to now. Making sure that you're actually having that willingness to listen and not automatically kind of curating a response in reaction to that is important. Simply listen to what the other person is saying and do the same in reverse. Give both sides the opportunity to hear and speak. More common ground will be found in these discussions than it would be if we were each huddled in our respective corners of the ideological spectrum. I'm optimistic about the future, and I hope that each of you are as well. But before we leave today, I want to give kudos to a few different people. Above all else, I want to say thank you to President Edmondson for putting on this wonderful forum. I can't think of a more deserving president to be putting on such an honor as this forum series has been. And she's been a real role model to not only me, but countless other students at this university for providing the space for all of us to offer our perspectives on civil dialogue and also have different perspectives. It's important that we actually talk about what we're preaching. So I want to say thank you to President Edmondson, but I also want to say thank you to VP Andrew Paulum. A few months ago, I would not have thought that you would be moderating this event, but I would like to say that you are an incredible leader at this university and have done strides to interact with the student body and obviously put on events like this. So I want to say thank you.
Mia.
Yeah, I agree to disagree with you there, Justin, because when we were in a planning meeting with Edmondson and she asked us who we thought would be a good moderator, I immediately said Andrew because he shows up in every single student space. He just shows up to Student Senate to have a good time. I was like, there is no one that could possibly be more fitting to sit up on this table with us because he engages with our student leaders so frequently. So thank you for saying yes, Andrew, because I immediately was like, that's who needs to be up here. Please and thank you. But my response to that, I'm going to emphasize this for the younger people in the room, because I think we are in a room full of faculty, USM admins, people that show up in their community and already, they know what to do. I trust that a lot of you know what to do. So for the younger people in the room, please seek out opportunities to engage and discuss important issues. Having open conversations with your peers, taking relevant courses to be able to apply your thoughts and knowledge. Many students don't realize how many opportunities there are in and outside of the classroom to have that space to engage. Our campus, we're in Portland. It's as urban as it can get here. There are a lot of different options for anything that you could possibly be interested in this city alone. And I highly recommend also, shameless plug as a women and gender studies student, attending a lecture or discussion hosted by our WGS program, as they really like to invite different faculty members and guest speakers to share research on unique social justice issues during the academic year. I always find that they have that program in its entirety, all of their classes have the most meaningful and intentional conversations. And I highly encourage anyone from any side of the political spectrum to even just take an intro to women and gender studies class, because it's not just that. And it teaches you so much more. So that's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Gino.
I would say give more use to the Socratic method. Ask questions, and for every answer that you get, ask even more questions. Ask so many questions that you get annoying. Like, ask questions. And one other thing will be read, 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 and read. Even if it's just 1 page a day, that still matters. Just read.
Chris.
Just love people. Yeah, it's really hard at times, but yeah, love your neighbor. They're just like you. You guys are my people, my family, and I am yours as well. So yeah, love people.
Let's give a round of applause to our students.
I told you this was going to be good and full of hope. And Andrew, thank you again for moderating. You just did a wonderful job. Thank you. So you can imagine what an incredible honor and privilege it was for me to spend a year with these students and these two here who are helping us this evening. The conversation that you heard tonight was just indicative of what we've done for a long time. And I've read their writings over the year. We've read things together. We've talked. And I could not be more proud of this inaugural class of Forum Scholars. And so thank you for spending this time with me and for giving me hope. Every time we were together, I left just filled with hope. And so I have a certificate to mark their participation in the program. And we also are giving them pocket constitutions, because I think that's important to have too. So I love these. They're so cool. So Kaylee Hersom. Ashley Gonzalez. Chris Mayes. And yes, Professor Eaton is here. We want to make sure we have an engineer in next year's class too. Mia Noon. Justin Gibbons. Haley Greco. And Gina Kavula. As Andrew said, the students offered that they would stay after the event to talk with anybody who's interested, although as Chris reminded us, they do have class tomorrow, so they can't stay too late. We will be continuing the forum next year. The theme for next year's forum is freedom of speech. Our first speaker in the fall is on September 18th. It's Jonathan Friedman from PEN America, so please mark your calendars and plan to join us again. I'm looking forward to having you back and to continuing this important conversation. Thanks so much and have a good evening.